I'm stronger than I've ever been before. When you're feeling weak, we're stronger. We are strong. We're stronger. Stronger than we've ever been. Before.
Welcome to Stronger with Armstrong podcast series. I'm your host, Eddie Armstrong. And in this series, each week, we will dive into the stories of extraordinary and ordinary Arkansans and the work that they're doing around our great state. Each episode will explore the personal and professional journeys of legislative leaders, corporate executives, community leaders from the hood and the neighborhood, to your rural farmlands and beyond. And today I am so grateful that two members of the Arkansas House of Representatives, formerly a member of the Arkansas House of Representatives, now Senator, have decided to join me today on our podcast series. Ladies and gentlemen, for those that don't know you, I'm going to ask that you give a brief introduction, but I'm going to take the personal liberty, if you don't mind, to give my introduction. To my far right is my friend and former colleague, Representative Aaron Pilkington, who's had an illustrious career in healthcare. But really what struck me from the moment we got to know each other when I was serving with you was just your willingness to go against the grain, march to the beat of your own drum, even when it was unpopular with your Republican colleagues. You never hesitated to stick your neck out there for sometimes what people would call crazy bills, but you did the hard work, and I admired that and I respected that. And then comes along what I would consider your sister cousin, Senator Jamie Scott, who was then elected to the House of Representatives, but very similar leadership style, not going to go with the crowd, is going to march to the beat of her own drum. And that has held a lot of respect for her time serving and the reason she now is serving as the state senator from North Little Rock, Arkansas. I've known Jamie well over 25 years. And dating back to our youth at our local Boys and Girls Club, though we were loud and rambunctious kids, we were in line and we were trying to seek making positive change very early on in life. So it's just an honor and a privilege to have watched you grow and to now seeing you serve as senator, representing well over 60 plus thousand constituents throughout Pulaski County. That is huge. 90,000, as she says. So that's huge work for people that don't know what you do and how you do it. I'd like for you to give a brief introduction, Senator Scott, and then Representative Pilkington, please offer us an introduction and a little bit of your background and what you do for a living.
I am a graduate of Arkansas State University,
Go
graduated
Wolves.
also from North Little Rock.
Go Cats.
First generation student. After I finished, I guess, my undergrad and my master's degree at Arkansas State, moved back home. Grew up with my family in the family restaurant at Lindsay's Barbecue, but always had a passion for politics. Our family had connections to the Clintons, of course. First presidential race or ever, I guess, campaign I really worked on. You started on campaigns a whole lot earlier than me, was Hillary Clinton's presidential race, and they flew me to Iowa. So that was my first getting my feet wet in politics. And it was amazing just having that experience working in a caucus in a battleground state. Missing all the holidays from the family, canvassing in 6 feet of snow, negative 16 degrees. But I was grateful for the opportunities, and it made me think about actually coming home and instead of continuing on the race and figuring out kind of what I wanted to do in politics and kind of chart my own way. Of course, I came home, prayed with my grandfather, and figured it out. But just a little bit about me. I finished my third term in the House. That's where I met Representative Pilkington. Are we going to talk about our relationship later?
You are going to talk about this indelible relationship.
I met him, served there for 6 years, and now I'm in my first term as a senator. I'm the youngest African American female elected to the Arkansas House and the Arkansas State Senate. And I'm just grateful for where God has brought me and how He allows me the opportunity to serve my people. So from the hood, as you said. So
the youngest, but for those out there watching, she does not act young, and you stay on the good side because she keeps a switch in her pack still, if that's still a thing you can do out there. But before you, Representative Pilkington, because I know this about her, tell the people what you do for a living and how near and dear that is to your heart, considering where we came from.
Yes. So I was appointed by County Judge Barry Hyde to serve, I guess it was 2015, to serve as his executive director of youth services. I probably manage a staff of almost 40 people. We oversee after school programs. We oversee workforce programs. We oversee ACT programs. Anything regarding kids, we do. And I love my boss because he doesn't confine me. Whatever my vision is for the youth, he lets me do that. He lets me and my staff be creative and innovative about the services that we feel like are needed in our community. And I've just been grateful to not be micromanaged and to be able to thrive as a young professional because I'm the closest to the grounds. I know what the needs are. And oftentimes, some of the legislation that I come back and pass and come talk to Pilkington about is because of my day-to-day interactions and the work that I do. And I'd be like, hey, this is an issue. Do you mind, leading it for me? Or can we, partner on it? Or let's go talk to the governor. And our relationship is so funny. He sometimes is the one who's setting the fires, and I'm the one who's like, "Hey, let's put them out a little, or let's approach it a different way." But we are a perfect mix, like we're a perfect little balance, and it works for us.
I truly enjoy watching you two work. Before you pass it off, how many young people do you serve in Pulaski County in the state of Arkansas? Number one, and number two, if you can't give us the total number, but I know it's hundreds of thousands. I think there was a second question to that. How many young people you serve, and why do you do what you do?
I do what I do because I think my greatest legacy is going to be being a champion for youth, for all youth, no matter what zip code they came from, that I was working to make a better Arkansas for our young people. And my whole life has been working with kids. And it's so funny. I always used to say, I don't want kids. And now I love his kids. I work with kids every day. So sometimes I feel like you can laugh and tell God your plans, but he has other plans. I'm surrounded by kids every day. I can't even shake them. Most of these people think that they kids are mine. And I'd be like, they not my child. I'm just helping you raise them. But I'm grateful to be able to be what people were to us in the community as we were being raised. There was a lot of people that helped invest in Eddie and I as we were growing up in the North Little Rock Boys and Girls Club, making sure we had opportunities. First time I got on a plane, it was because the North Little Rock Boys and Girls Club sent me to like a national leadership program. So we just got so much from the community that helped raise us. And I'll never forget people like Mr. Weatherton, Mr. Bennett, our counselors, everybody who made sure that we were exposed to opportunities. And I'm committed to making sure the generation behind me, I give them everything I have every day. So whatever opportunities I can provide for them, that's what I do in my job as the Director of Youth Services.
That's wonderful. So if you need to know more, that was my question about youth services for mothers and grandmothers and parents. We like the show to be transparent. Where can they find out how they can apply for a summer job or get more engaged in youth services if they're here in Pulaski County and in Arkansas?
Our Facebook page is Pulaski County Youth Services, and it's also on the Pulaski County government page. You can just go to the Youth Service tab and you can see links to sign up for anything that we have.
Word. It's a great program, and thank you for what you do, Representative Pilkington. I know, no more. I just wanted to, children are near and dear to my heart too, so she knows that. Let's learn about you, Representative Pilkington.
Well, thank you. We were just laughing because she kept on passing the mic back over, and I was passing it back. I'm a generational Arkansan. My grandfather was a hospital administrator here in the state, ran the Arkansas Hospital Association. My dad was too. As a youth, we moved around quite a bit. I actually paged in the Kentucky State Legislature. That was kind of my first exposure to that. And then went to college and decided, I wanted Arkansas to be my home again, and it was in my blood. And so I came back and went to UAMS and got a master's in healthcare administration, and I was working in healthcare. And but the itch was still here, and I'd worked on a lot of campaigns. And it's actually funny. I would try to recruit people to run, and I'd always give this line where I was like, "Well, I would run if I could, but I can't. I don't live in the district." And I was literally feeding that line to somebody, and they're like, "What are you talking about? You do live in the district." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, and they flipped it on me. And then I went home and thought about it and decided to run. And that was back in 2016. And of course, that's how we met. So I've been in it for a while now, but I've really enjoyed it. And it is amazing to see changes made. And I tell people a lot of times, the best part about living in a state like Arkansas is, we're not a big state, but we're not a super small state either. And so, you can make a really big difference on a big level and make Arkansas a leader in the whole country in probably an easier way than trying to move the needle in New York or California. You can move the needle here in Arkansas. And so that's, I think, one of the most exciting things about being in the legislature. So I've got a background in healthcare, but the political bug was always in me too. And so here I am. And I've changed a lot since when I was first elected. I had no wife, had no kids. Now I have a wife and 3 kids and a 4th one on the way. And so it's just lots changed for me since I've been in the legislature.
And you were one of the youngest when you were elected, correct?
I was the second youngest. Austin McCollum was beating me by 20 days. So,
wow. So before you today, ladies and gentlemen, we have two of the youngest, the youngest female African American ever to be elected into the Arkansas State Senate. And that's a huge feat. Thinking about the history of our state and the sheroes that have come before you, like Irma Hunter Brown and Miss Llewellyn and the illustrious Linda Pondester Chesterfield and our beloved Senator Joyce Elliott, whom I know you carry in your heart every day. I want to get into legislation and policy, if you all don't mind, and unpack a defining moment. You said bills can come to Arkansas and it could shape really the tempo for being a leader in the world. And what you all were able to do with others like Senator Irvin on House Bill 1427, our Healthy Moms, Healthy Babies Act 124 now. It's a crucial piece of legislation for improving maternal health in Arkansas. And I want to thank you all on behalf of the citizens of the state for the work you all did. But can you share any specifics, facts, statistics, or highlights about what drove you all to get behind this piece of legislation and making it something that allows for mothers to become stronger through enhanced maternal health care?
Yeah. Well, and just to give you a little background on my history with this, so Speaker Gillum, my first term, sent me to a women and children's health conference. And I literally told him, I was like, I mean, I work in healthcare, but like, that's not really my expertise or anything.
This is going to sound crazy, but it wasn't because you were single, right?
Yeah, maybe Gillum, that was his idea. But I went, and it was just fascinating, you know, the issues that were going on that weren't getting addressed here in the state. And so I started working on that. You know, we built the breast milk bank here at UAMS. That took us a couple tries around. You know, we expanded access to, we did mental health screenings for pregnant women and postpartum women. That was a previous session that we did that. And so it was just kind of funny. I did that. And then, so that's kind of how Healthy Moms, Healthy Babies came too, is because I'd been kind of hitting the beat of the drum. We've got to do something. It's really bad. It's really in the state. And, you know, of course, the Dobbs decision happened, and that also changed the focus on maternal health. There was suddenly a larger discussion about that as well. And so, you know, I'd had all these like different policy ideas. And so if you actually look, I filed like 6 or 8 different bills.
I know.
And all of them got squished into this bill because it was one of those deals. Let's do one big one that we can all get behind and not fight and nitty pick it, or however you say it, and get a big bill together. And so that's what we did. But, you know, really the defining things about it is presumptive eligibility, which is huge. I think if you asked a lot of people who worked in healthcare if we were to ever get some sort of presumptive eligibility here in the state, they would have said, no way. That's always been kind of laughed out of the room, dead on arrival kind of policy.
Unpack presumptive.
Yeah, sure. So when you walk into a provider's office, a lot of times you don't have insurance. And so, but we think you qualify. And so, you know, presume eligibility. We're going to treat you. We're going to get you taken care of. And then we're going to do the paperwork on the back end. You know, obviously, especially with pregnant women, you know, you come in with a big baby bump, you know, we're pretty well going to know that you're going to qualify. And so what we're seeing is a lot of, you know, not only was our postpartum outcomes really poor, but our prenatal care was really poor too. And so we've had a lot of women, the first time they ever saw the doctor, it was an ER room delivering that baby. And so letting women come in early, get signed up, presume that they're eligible, get them treated, and let the paperwork come on the back end. Put people before processes. Getting that done, that actually helps us to improve the outcome, because if we can get them in that prenatal care pipeline, then it's a better chance of better outcomes on delivery, and then of course better outcomes on postpartum as well. And so it's many ways we're going to save the same money by getting them in that pipeline early, but we're also going to save lives too, because so many of those complications, those deaths that happen during birth or even post, a lot of those things that we can treat the underlying conditions early on when they're coming in for prenatal care, it just, you know, it piles, it snowballs, and it produces better results. So that's where presumptive eligibility comes in. You know, of course, part 2 is just raising the reimbursement rates for C-sections and for other for care too. I mean, we've got delivery units shutting down all over the state. You know, we had, I think, 2 recently shut down. And so we're trying to stop the bleed. And one of the things that we talked about, you know, we can fight over some of these other issues, but if you don't have a place to deliver that baby, you're going to have bad outcomes. I mean, I don't care who you are. And so that was a big part of it, was raising those reimbursement rates, unbundling the payment too, so that you can get the primary care providers more involved. All that stuff works together to now make it to where it wasn't to keep your delivery unit open. You weren't losing money if you were in the hospital. And that was the hope of this, because, you know, you go to these hospital administrators and they would say, we don't want to shut it down. We want to keep it running. But if we keep this running, we might end up having to shut down the whole hospital. And so we're having to sacrifice one department to save the others. And unfortunately, that's what was happening. So you're getting women that are getting left behind. And so by doing this, that helps to change the trajectory. And hopefully we won't see any more labor and delivery units shut down in Arkansas. And my hope is in a few more years, we'll actually see gain some more people bring them back online when they start running the performance and saying, okay, now with a reimbursement rate like this, the commercial rate's going up as well. We can now run a labor and delivery unit here and get it going. And so we've done a lot to kind of keep that going. And I'm really excited. And those are kind of two big ones, I think, a part of that. There's some other stuff with telemedicine and remote patient monitoring, all of which is really good policy as well. But, those are kind of really two big defining ones.
Well, we know that Senator Scott loves children, and you apparently love healthcare. You didn't mention this, but tell the people out there what you do for a day job.
Yeah. So I work for a federally qualified health center called RCare. We've got about 90 locations. We're in Mississippi as well, and Kentucky. Of course, we call it Kentucky Care, Mississippi Care. We don't want to upset the Mississippians and call it RCare. But so it's for those who don't know, community health centers, they serve anyone, regardless of their ability to pay. We've got some federal tort protection, things like that kind of help us see that mission. But, we're in a lot of rural areas all over the state and some urban areas too, where you have lack of service. We've got some clinics down here in Canis, but we've got ones in the Delta, like in Des Arc and Brinkley. And so actually for a while I was over clinics that went all the way from Hector and Pope County all the way to Brinkley, Arkansas, and everything in between. And I, ran those during COVID, and that was crazy. But it really showed you a complete different swath of life. You walk to the Conway Clinic and it'd be completely different than the, Hazen Clinic. And so different issues. But it was really enlightening. And honestly, it gave me such good perspective on just the different needs of the Delta and their healthcare needs versus, like a Conway, Arkansas or Little Rock, Arkansas, how those would change. Even too, the River Valley, it's a little different. There are a lot of similarities, but there are a lot of differences because like in the River Valley where I'm growing, you got some population growth, not like Northwest Arkansas, but so that you're having growth challenges where in the Delta, you've got a lot of population shrinkage. And so now you're losing population, you're losing tax base, infrastructure is going down. And, you think of that and you're like, what does that have to do with healthcare? Well, it does, because you're losing your workforce. And, because of that. And then of course people are losing jobs. And so now they can't pay for their medicine. They can't pay for services. And they're, needing to use a facility like ours that can help see them regardless of their ability to pay. But even then that puts a strain on us, and so, we're having, some of our other facilities kind of subsidize those to keep them up and keep them running. But, and so, to me, and it really shows the need for us as a whole state to kind of not only just think about our own little regions, but think about the state as a whole. How do we keep not only Northwest Arkansas healthy and the River Valley healthy, but how do we keep Northeast, Southeast, the Delta? How do we, and, South Pulaski, how do we do all to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction? We may not be as far along in some of these areas, but we can at least moving in the same direction.
Thank you very much. And shout out to this next question is for Jamie or Senator Scott. I'm sorry, I'm Senator, but I'm going to pass this question to you. But before that, I was going to give a shout out. My thoughts were moving a bit fast to the brains behind RCare and them creating these clinics in least populated areas around Pulaski County and our regional cities like Fort Smith. Mr. Collier and Stu and Albie and Winston, the Collier family out of Augusta, Arkansas, has just done a great deal. I know that Dr. Collier is behind RCare, and it's really, really impressive what they've been able to do to go from a handful of 20, 30 clinics in Arkansas to now Mississippi and Kentucky, and what they're doing to help our rural communities with access to healthcare.
Yeah, and I would say too, they're really inspiring. Dr. Collier always says we serve the least, the last, and the lost. And so our mission is health for all, but he always says that's like our de facto mission. And it is one of those things where it is inspiring. I think there's a lot of people who love our care and love working there because of that dedication.
Did you know that Arkansas,
people, regardless of their ability to pay, we're gonna take care of everyone. And so I just think that's the true heart of healthcare is. And so people who I think get in healthcare for that passion, see that passion in the Colliers, and then of course, they bring it to work with them every day. So it's really
to work
amazing.
For them. The great family. Senator Scott, how can prioritizing maternal health impact the overall strength and prosperity of our state?
Well, first of all,
I know how much you love your mama too.
No, first of all, I want to give the mic back to Representative Pilkington because I feel like he's been working so hard on, was it House Bill 1004? Yeah. I think that's a key part of it. We have to extend the coverage so that women have a year, right? We're the only state in the country, right, who hasn't passed it. And he has been working on this bill for how long?
About 4 years.
He's been working on it for 4 years. He's so dedicated because Arkansas has the highest rate of maternal mortality rate in the country. And so there's this, and that's important to me because they're Black, brown, white women, no matter where you come from and where you live at, that are dying. And he's taken this issue on as a white man, to be the champion for these communities. And when we talk about those statistics, Black women are dying at a greater rate than anybody else. And so oftentimes, like he was saying, I approach policy by going to get somebody who doesn't have my same life shared experiences, because you helped me carry the light and the load in my community. And when it comes to rural Arkansas, 60% of rural Arkansas right now doesn't have like labor and delivery services. That impacts our maternal mortality rate also. And the women need access to mental health care. Arkansas is like a mental health care desert, right? But we passed some bills this session that I think will help with that. So the numbers are there if it makes sense, some of the statistics that you asked us about earlier. But I think when we invest in women, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself, we invest in women and we give them the paid leave that they need to take care of their families, that women raise healthy kids. And then in return, we have strong families, which in return also builds a better, stronger, thriving Arkansas. And so that helps our economy. When women aren't worried about how they're going to be paid, or when they're having to, when we talk about the percentage of healthcare services in the rural areas, they're having to take off and drive longer, right, to get to just basic needs and services. And so we have to develop in those areas. We have to keep some of our hospitals and our stuff that is open because women just don't have that access. And so I think those things contribute to the maternal mortality rate that we have in the state. But I commend Representative Pilkington because let me tell you, it's a hill he won't die on. He's unyielding and trying to get it passed. I don't care who he goes up against. And so I reached out to him. When did I reach out to you? Like a month ago. It's like sometimes we can just sense when each other is not okay. You know what I mean? Because to me, politics goes beyond Democrat and Republicans. Like I care about him. I care about his wife. I care about his kids. I've been at the baptism of the babies. But when you get to know people in Arkansas, I think we have a stronger Arkansas because we can work on issues that we probably wouldn't have worked on together if we wouldn't have got to know each other. So we're building a stronger Arkansas and fighting for women to have the paid leave that they need so that they can take care of their families, right? Pilkington is like, just has decided to let his wife stay at home, which is, I think is amazing. And they're having all these kids. And I'm always like, how many more kids are you going to have? But when you can fight for women, like when you have a husband that's so involved, you know what I mean? It's his profession. He brings those expertise to the legislator, and everybody at the Capitol brings something different, right? They bring a different gift and mindset and specialties. I'm like the kid person because I work with youth. His expertise in the hospital. So most of the time I'm either going to like an attorney or I'm going to somebody in their expertise. Like the other night I was sick and I text him and Lee Johnson because they're the medical people. And I'm like, hey, help me. But I trust them, if that makes sense, to care about me more than just a politician. And I think we have to get to caring about Arkansans, no matter what they look like, no matter their jobs, where they come from, what part of the state they live in. I care about the women in River Valley, in the Delta, just as much as I care and fight for the women in Pulaski County. And I think if we have that mindset that I care about your mother, I care about your sister, I care about if they have the health care that they need, I care about if she's in a mental space to go back to work and take care of herself. I think as policymakers, you're seeing more of that. You're seeing us trying to help bridge the divide and educate each other to where it's humanity, right? First in the politics and the policies, instead of us just screaming DNRs and going to our corners and retreating and not really coming together to kind of make the state a better place for women. So
that's very refreshing, Senator Scott. And she was going to pass the ball, but the shot was wide open, so she took it. And I have to just commend you because I think it's important that you all out there get a snapshot at looking at what bipartisan work looks like. It may not always be that you get along, but there is a phone call to be made and an opportunity to work together. And witnessing her get ready to pass you the mic back is no different than her passing you a piece of legislation or vice versa. And I think that is the real magic that we lack today, and how rules become laws, or laws then become rules that we're governed by. So on a personal note, since you guys know so much about each other, or at least enough, can you share some insights or advice on how your leadership styles can inspire or drive positive change today, especially for our young people? They have a multitude of new issues and challenges, and you guys are young, and I still consider myself young at heart. What can you offer us from a personal perspective? We're skipping back on your insights or advice on how your leadership style has been, Senator Scott, in your career, and what would you offer for young people?
I would say that find a mentor, first of all.
Okay.
You can't be the person that knows everything. You need to be able to accept feedback. I was blessed with an amazing mentor, Senator Joyce Elliott. She's been my mentor for over 15 years.
Amen.
And, you know, it takes a lot for somebody to be able to pour into you the way she's poured into me and made sure I had opportunities. I know for so many years, she wanted me to run for office. And I was like, nah, girl, I'm like the Christian version of Olivia Pope. I run races in Arkansas. I'm good. Like, this is my, you know, that was my jam. That was what I was safe and comfortable doing. Like Pilkington, I'm out trying to recruit people who I thought would be the best voice for our community, never seeing it in myself, never thinking that I was the person who could be this champion and voice for my community. And then Joyce sent me to, her and this other woman sent me to this conference called Women at the Table of Powers. And it was in Washington, D.C. And oh my gosh, that conference changed my life. And one particular conversation, it's just the power of our stories, right? I met this woman from Iran, and this woman told me, like, you know, how come you don't want to run for office? And I told her what I did. I was a political consultant, had a mentor. I worked on different races, blah, 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 blah. And she was like, well, let me tell you something. Every day I hug my husband and my daughter before I go to work. And I was just like, okay, like that's normal. So what's so special about that? And she said, I do that because I've served with women who've been killed in my country. And oftentimes we have to make detours to get to my state capital to fight for women's rights and education and all the things that you believe in. And she was like, how far do you live from the capital in your country? I was like, 3 miles. And it was so humbling though, because the price of service in her country was potentially her life, if that made sense. And I was like, I got to have the courage, and the balls to go do this, because if this woman is making that kind of sacrifice for the things she believes in, surely I can do it as well. And so I came back and I was like laser focused. You cannot stop me. I was like texting Eddie and everybody. I was like,
she definitely came back with the courage and the cojones. I'm just saying.
Because he was my state rep then. So I came back like,
in the door.
I'm running for office.
You did. And I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. But I also went through the presidential leadership program that President Bush and President Clinton have. And being just a young dim growing up in the party, I'm grateful that my mentor kept me in the party when I was discouraged sometimes about the direction of the party, the lack of opportunities for young Blacks, or me feeling a lack of that they weren't inclusive enough. And I was very outspoken about those things, but I do those things in a respectful way because my grandma don't play that, first of all. So I ain't gonna be talking to nobody crazy. I'm still scared of those people, my grandparents. But that training was really good because I learned so much from President Bush and his wife and his administration team. And I learned so much from the Clintons and President Clinton, which I've known, but he told us every day you have to sign up to fight for somebody. Like every day you got to get up and go out there and win for somebody. And President Bush would be like, you don't need to get stuck in the poll numbers and being popular. As you can see, sometimes I wasn't popular with my party, but I always fought for the things that I believed in. And so, and those are just small things that I can just tell you, but we had such in-depth sessions with them and they pushed us on being a leader that's bigger than your party. You know what I mean? And I never forgot that when I came up here to the Capitol. And I think that's somehow how our friendship, I approach politics different because of that experience, if that makes sense. I don't just see myself as the Democratic senator. I know that every vote I cast is going to impact 3 million Arkansans, but they shaped my mindset differently. And it was the shift that I needed before coming into office. So I'm not just trying to be the champion of the Democratic Party. I care about everybody in Arkansas, in Arkansas, and I'm going to fight for all Arkansans. Even if you didn't vote for me, even if you disagree with some of the stuff, if you reach out to me, I'm going to do whatever I can. And I just needed that shift in mindset because sometimes the parties are so far right and so far left and we miss things. And I don't want to be the person that misses things. I want people who don't have the same life experiences as me, an older white man, like in the Arkansas Senate, who might want to come talk to me about an issue and I can educate them on an issue like it's about food insecurity on college campuses. You have people who didn't realize that kids actually go hungry on college campuses because they weren't from that generation. They didn't know when the dorms closed that some of the kids weren't eating. And when we were talking about discrimination about hair, I approached some of the white men and some Breanne Davis specifically, because I was like, you probably haven't been discriminated against because of your pretty blonde hair. You know what I mean? But educating and taking the time when I got the relationship with people to say, hey, there are kids that are being discriminated in our state. One of them is at the University of Fort Smith, and he's a good kid in college. He's trying to make a living for himself. You know what I mean? Why are we allowing people to be discriminated against? But if you don't have that relationship, I can't get them to help me carry that fight. And it's a world that they don't know nothing about. They don't know nothing about, kids being discriminated against because of their hair. But when I can educate them and we're civil in debate, right? So me and Representative Pilkington, we always say that we will always rather sometimes be on the side fighting together than me and him fighting against each other. Because sometimes when if we're in a committee meeting and he's at the table and I'm grilling him about an issue that I'm not on board with, we just much rather be a team sometimes than be fighting each other.
Y'all could be brother and sisters, and I would hate to see the fight in the front yard. Senator Scott, before you pass the mic on Representative Pilkington, and don't forget the question is your insight and advice on your leadership style. But will you please you answered it, Senator Scott. I want you to elaborate on what most of our viewers may not know about. What does the Crown Act do? Oh,
so the Crown Act was passed so that we had an incident that happened at the University of Fort Smith, and it was a young man. He was on the college basketball team, and I think he had dreads. And the coach publicly made a comment saying he didn't want to recruit kids who, have hair like him. And so somebody who reached out to me had already called the Democrat and the Republican from that area, kind of trying to get it resolved. And I'm all things kids. So if you call me about something with kids, I'm upset. And I kind of tried to let the people from that area take care of it. They weren't as passionate, as upset as I was. And I was like, well, it's not fair because we love the Hogs, the basketball players, and their hair is sometimes all over the place. I was like, we should live in two different Arkansas where these other kids are being discriminated against and they're out trying to just be productive citizens in this state. And so we worked on a bill to get that passed through K through 12 and higher ed, where there's no discrimination based on your hair. And me, even as a Black woman, I do a lot of stuff with my hair. I wear braids sometimes. I wear my natural hair pressed out. I just do all kinds of different things with my hair. I might wear my afro, which my mother doesn't like all the time, but I can just do a lot of different things with my hair. But
believe it or not, they try to touch my bald head and I don't let them.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for the Crown Act. I mean, I was there in committee watching you testify. Not sexy, not popular, not resounding support, but you pressed forward. Senator Breanne pressed forward with you, Representative Pilkington and others. And I just think that those were highlighted moments, though deemed small in some people's eyes. It's those pieces of legislation that really have a resounding impact. And you may not know it now, but in the future, somebody will be thanking you for that. Talk about your leadership style, Representative Pilkington. Some insights or advice that you can share on how your leadership style can inspire others for positive change.
Sure. So, I mean, it's really hard to define, I guess, what you call my leadership style.
I can tell you.
Okay.
But go ahead. No.
Well, it's funny. I was thinking about you talking about fires. I remember someone once was talking about me and Lee Johnson, and they said, Lee's if you're wanting to bring everyone to the table and get a compromise. Pilkington's if you want someone to run in and throw a grenade. And so, but sometimes you need a grenade thrown.
You are the grenade guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think it's super flattering for me, but no, I think
it's a friendly grenade.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's this. I think you have to learn to be a happy warrior. And, there's times I get upset and ticked off. And usually if I go to sleep and have 24 hours, I can get back on the horse. And, in the legislature, you're going to have a lot of defeats as well as a lot of victories. And so that's just part of it. So if you can become a happy warrior and be happy in what you're doing, it makes it easier because people are always going to try to throw punches at you. And if you can just laugh it off and let it roll off your shoulders, and let the defeat roll off your shoulders, then it's amazing what you can do, you know? And so they always talk about, you know, failure is when you're not getting knocked down, but when you refuse to get back up. And so that's, you know, I think one of those things. And I would say just advice for anyone young. I mean, the first off would be, I'd say, you know, really learn to, or try to figure out what you really believe. You know, I mean, for me as a Christian, you know, as a Catholic, it's, you know, my duty to God and what I feel like He calls me to do. And, you know, when I'm standing before Him at judgment, you know, that I can say in my life, I did what I thought you wanted me to do. And so because I have that as my kind of North Star, everything else, you know, kind of circles around that. And so things that might be important to other people are important to me because it doesn't go along with that. And so, but because I have that, then I can go after and do things and push for things that maybe some people wouldn't be as brave to push against. But I just, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, I'd rather say I did everything I could for these women who fall through this, you know, eligibility category than say, well, I was tick off somebody. And I didn't push for it. It's like, that's not seem like a good excuse to say in front of your Lord and Savior who died on the cross for you. So I think of that. And then the other one, the other piece of advice, the two things I would say is, you know, seek to understand. You know, one of the greatest tragedies in life is, you know, a lot of people fight other people thinking they're both fighting for peace. And there's a lot of people who maybe, you know, approaching an issue from a different angle, but, you know, why are they pushing that? Why is someone pushing this policy that you don't agree with? Or why is someone doing something you don't agree with? Try to understand, because then if you actually get to the root of the issue, then maybe the policy prescription isn't, you know, maybe it's not something you agree with, but maybe you find something you can agree with because you do agree with the issue you're trying to solve needs to be fixed. And I think that's one of the reasons why, like, me and Jamie get along so well. Is like, Jamie doesn't ask me to be moderate. She lets me be, you know, the crazy conservative that I am. And I let her be the San Francisco liberal living in Arkansas. I'm just kidding. But, you know, like, we've never told each other, change your views to be my friend. Change your views to get on with my bill. We've never said that. And I think it's a more honest relationship. But then we also can be honest with the people who vote us, who said, hey, I live in District 45. I want a Republican who's, you know, these things. And I am that for my constituents. Same with her. They want a Democrat who believes in these things. But they've never said, don't work with someone, you know, try to find solutions. And so we try to find solutions that don't make us give up our beliefs. And it's hard to work through that. But when you do find those solutions and you find policy prescriptions that work, it's really powerful. And so, but that comes from a situation of seeking to understand. I mean, the Crown Act, which we talked about, to me, that's just, you know, that's reining in government. That's cutting red tape. Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And
I can see that. I can see you taking
it's
it
good.
on.
It's good policy. I mean, why you know, it's like, listen, I want to, you know, that sounds like big government to me. The government telling you what kind of hairstyle you can have and allowing people to discriminate against you. That's not, you know, to me, that's not conservative. But, you know, she might argue from a different side. And that's the point. That's why it's good policy, because you're able to come from different angles and actually make something happen.
Let's talk about the different angles and good policy in today's climate. And this is, again, for our younger viewers that are coming a little bit disgruntled and maybe not as engaged in the political process anymore, because this isn't cool. This isn't the right thing to do. And what type of flack have you all taken from your respective parties because of your relationship? You know, it got to the point when I was House Minority Leader that some of my Republican friends and colleagues didn't want to be seen at the Capitol talking to me in public, but we could talk back room. How have you all managed to ride the wave of the bickering and, oh, Jamie's friends with this Republican, Aaron Pilkington, or Aaron's friends with this black girl from North Little Rock who's a senator, which it gets worse than that. We all know that the words that are maybe shared sometimes are unfortunate, but how have you all managed to avoid getting into the fray and staying effective at your jobs for the people?
Yeah, I think for me,
this is a real deal. People can't be seen uniting anymore if you're from different parties, let alone all the other mess. But
no, I think it's two things. One is, you know, I'm never going to let anyone tell me who I can and cannot hang out with, and who I can't talk to. But I tell people all the time, I mean, I need to get the votes to pass the legislation I need to. Why would I not talk to somebody if I got a Republican who won't vote for it for one reason, but I got a Democrat who can? that gets a bill that helps you, why would I not do that? And once again, it's like, yeah, why are you friends with this liberal Democrat? It's like, well, why not? Isn't it better for me to understand what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish instead of fighting? I mean, there's times when I think Republicans lose the messaging battle because because we're ineffective at messaging what we're trying to do. And same with the Democrats. They're sometimes bad about messaging what they're trying to do, and it comes off in a different way. Knowing who the other person is helps me actually better with my own messaging with my Democrats back home.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's one part. I mean, yeah, you got some people who want to be like, but I always say, look at my scorecard, look at how I vote. I mean, CPAC put me as the third most conservative members. I'm like, you want to say I'm not I'm not some, red-ribbed Republican because I hang out with Jamie Scott. Like, listen, I vote more conservative than you do. So, you can just shut the hell up.
As Jamie would say, she's got the receipts. Show the receipts.
Exactly. So, I mean, and that's actually what matters is how we're voting. And so I just think I think that's just an effective way is, I keep my eye on what I believe in and what I want to do. And that's what I'm going to do. But I'm never going to, I would say this, I actually know what I believe so that I can be with people who maybe don't believe the same things I believe, because it's not going to affect what I believe. If you're so afraid to hang out with someone who doesn't believe the same things as you, it means maybe you don't actually truly believe what you're saying.
Come on now.
So
I like that. Senator Scott? Oh, yeah, she wants some juice on that. I know that gets a little.
No, I think he answered that question well. Nobody's going to tell me who to hang out with and who to talk to as well. And I lean back to my faith and how I'm raised as well. You're not supposed to avoid people. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's scripture that tells us to love your neighbors. And so I try to go out my way to figure out. We had a senator who is kind of considered on my side of the party, just not somebody that Democrats would work with. I got to know him. I knew that his wife was battling and I'm always this way. I always tell Pilkington this every session. I'm going to go find a Republican that's the farthest away from me, right? On the political scale. And I'm going to see if I can find some meaningful legislation for us to pass. And he used to laugh at me, but I'm kind of the person, like, I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. You know what I mean? And so I built relationships that are authentic, if that makes sense. And I'm never leaving my democratic values or the things that I believe in as a Black Christian woman. But I try to, when I knew that one of the members, his wife had cancer. And so I was like, hey, let's look at doing some reform or putting something in statute to where the women in the prison. And he was approaching it from, it's going to cost the state money. I'm approaching it like, I think we should do it to provide breast screenings for them. And then another member came to us and said, hey, let's do prostate screenings for the men. But it was all started from me trying to make sure I could find something very substantive that I can do with somebody who's so far, who's to me always throwing grenades. Like as a Republican, he was somebody who was and his name is Bob Salinger, right?
Ballinger.
Yeah, Ballinger, Bob Ballinger. Yes. And so, and even when I announced for Senate, he texted me and he was like, I'm so proud of you. You're going to do a great job. And he was like, I'm not going to tweet it because I don't want people to get mad. But, that's our relationship. And we were able to find legislation that we cared about that's probably protecting women in our prisons and men in our prisons. And it was because I didn't close the door on ever being able to work with him, despite what people in my party said. So I didn't agree with a lot of his legislation, but I got to know him as a person. I knew what he cared about. And once I did that, I could put some policy in place that helped saving the lives of Arkansans. And so to me, you can never tell me that I shouldn't talk to people and that I shouldn't get to know them, because I'm making and creating a better Arkansas by going to talk to people that other people wouldn't talk to. You know what I mean? I'll go to dinner with them and people are like, I don't know how you go to dinner with them. Why? You know what I mean? And so I know he probably gets the pushback, but I am a grown woman. I'm going to spend time with who I want to spend time with, where I feel valued and where I can learn from people who aren't like me. And so it's different to fight people when you know what's going on in their families, when you're praying with these people, when we have challenges that come up. We have some members whose wives have had breast cancer and some other things. When you know Susan has X, Y, and Z, and you're praying, you're one of the prayer partners that's helping the family get through stuff, and people know that that's sincere, that's above and beyond politics, if that makes sense. And that's how you can see some good things come sometimes later on in policy.
That's a lot, and that's amazing. I think that it's a testament for our young viewers and future political leaders to know that this can work and will work. And you guys are breathing, living examples right here. Without giving your age, I believe you're both born in the 90s, correct? Maybe. Okay. You know, I was having a recent conversation about how amazing the 90s music was and what we got to grow up with. But speaking on that pivotal time in the 90s in which I grew up in as well, I wasn't born in the 90s. Future outlook. If you could look out 50 years from now, yes, and the work you're doing with the Future Caucus, this is a two-for question. Give us a little bit about the Future Caucus, what it is and what it does, but this last question's for both of you. Today, looking ahead, where do you see us today in our strength, and what do you think could make Arkansas stronger 50 years from now?
Right. Well, first off, just a little bit of the Future Caucus. It's for every legislator that's under the age of 40. We come together as a bipartisan group to talk about ideas, talk about the issues, that affect young people. Because a lot of times in a lot of legislatures, it's a little more gray hair, which is perfectly fine. But it's just good for us to kind of come and bring up issues that, maybe are getting overlooked and try to lead on those. And so it's a national group, and Jamie's won the Rising Star Award from the Future Caucus. I won it too. And so I think we're the only state that's got, 2 members who have won it. Yeah, there we go. And we've got one of the largest groups of young legislators in the country. So it's really an interesting time here in Arkansas. Yeah. And we passed the most legislation of bipartisan Future Caucus legislation. So we're really doing it. We're doing the work with them. And so it's an exciting group to be a part of. But to your point, where do I see Arkansas 50 years and what, our strengths right now? I think, always our natural beauty, I think, is a big strength to Arkansas. I think it's one of those things we just take for granted. We overlook all the time. But I was kayaking down the Buffalo River this weekend. It's just gorgeous. And you have people from all over the country coming down there and being a part of Arkansas. And it's just, it's something we just should always make sure that we protect our natural beauty and our wildlife. And, we were joking, like, wouldn't it be great if this was all condos, because it's a joke. We don't want that, it's and so, but yeah, so that's, that. And then I just think too, when you look at some of the innovation that goes on in Arkansas, people don't really think about Arkansas as like an innovation place, but I think we've got a lot of innovation growing in Northwest Arkansas, and it's kind of seeping down into the River Valley. And then of course, I think you've got a lot of, honestly, Arkansas really politically also like hits above its weight. You think about the ambassador to the UK was Warren Stevens from Little Rock, Mike Huckabee, the ambassador to Israel. Obviously Sarah Huckabee Sanders is a national name. We've got every single congressman's a chairman. We really are really punching above our weight here, but that's something I think historical about Arkansas. Wilbur Mills is a great example. Bill Clinton, who's president. It is kind of crazy for a state of 3 million people, what we've been able to do nationally. And I think, and I would say, like, for Arkansas over the next 50 years, we should never lose sight that we punch above our belt constantly, and we just need to keep pushing that. And I think over the next 50 years, I think you will, hopefully our population decline will level off. We've grown, but we're not having enough births, and that kind of goes to the whole maternal health thing. But I think, in some of these areas where they've just been losing population, I'm hoping we kind of hit rock bottom and then start rebuilding. And we see more investment coming in the area. We've done a lot of great legislation around energy and economic development this session to kind of re-engineer that. And, what I tell people is we have cheap electricity, cheap land, and an eager workforce. And as people move out of these other states and start looking to, you've seen people move out of California and New York, and they're going to Texas, but now even Texas is getting overloaded. Now they're looking to Arkansas and Tennessee and Mississippi. And so you've seen a lot of these big economic development projects. And I've got one I'm working on in Clarksville right now, a big data center. That's the money that brings in for our tax base. It's game changing. It helps our schools, helps us rebuild our infrastructure, helps us, lower our property rates, or, not property taxes, the millage, but our other taxes, sales tax, we can maybe get those down, help get more home construction being built. I think all those things together suddenly become a very attractive place. And I always say too, Arkansas is one of the best places to raise a family. That's why giving birth here is, the fact we have such bad numbers is terrible, because it's cheap to live. It's a good community. Little Rock, when you think about like large southern capital cities, it's just got a different vibe. Mm-hmm. And you still have these kind of neighborhood communities, and it's how you kind of want your cities to actually be. Mm-hmm. And I think Northwest Arkansas is doing a very similar thing. In the River Valley, you've got Russellville and Clarksville kind of do the same thing too. And Jonesboro and Paracle, these are really great communities. And I think if we can kind of keep that culture and keep that kind of family mentality as we do grow and be like, hey, this is the Arkansas way, I think we will kind of be seen as maybe when you're young, you're single, you go to Dallas and you go to Nashville, but when it's time to settle down and have kids and you buy that home and get that yard, Arkansas is the place you want to be. You want to go and get to the corporate office in Arkansas. And so that's kind of my hope when I see us grow, is because I think that's the way you keep the safety and the security that's here in Arkansas too, because it's a good place to live.
It's a great place to live and a great place to raise a family. I tell people oftentimes, well, I won't give them that. Senator Scott, will you tell us, in your own humble opinion, looking out to the future, you talk about naming neighborhoods, and we can go Glenview, Dixie, Rose City, Meadow Park, list goes on in the great city of North Little Rock. What do you see the future of Arkansas and being stronger than it is today?
I think we need to work on adult education, making sure that we have an educated workforce, right? So that when we're recruiting jobs, that people can do these jobs. But I liked all the stuff that he said, and I'm glad that he was on record talking about how great Little Rock was. Now, I know he loves North Little Rock, though, because when he used to stay in North Little Rock, right, in an apartment when he was
freshman, he did.
In Argenta, and he loved it. But I like his vision for Arkansas, if that makes sense. Because I don't know what the state looks like in 50 years, but I know that when I'm gone, people are going to say I gave it my all to make sure that my community, my district, and this state was a better place. And so I can't really tell you what I really have a vision for, but I would like to see us get when we're talking about our prison systems, I would like to see us get some where we're actually rehabbing the people to where there's not a resounding door where people are just going in and out, where they actually are coming out and getting jobs in the workforce and being able to provide for their families, if that makes sense. I would like to see Arkansas to where kids aren't where we're funding higher ed at the rate that we're supposed to be funding it at. And so these kids aren't getting all the student loan debt to pay for school. Hunger is the issue that we care about. I would like to see our numbers increase on food insecurities for our seniors, food insecurities for our children. And we're working and striving towards those things. So when I think about what the future looks like, I think about policies. I don't want us to continue to be the number one state in the country for maternal mortality rates, and that Black women are still dying at a greater rate than everybody. And I don't just say that to just advocate for Black women. I just don't want women, period, dying at the rate that they're dying in the state of Arkansas. So I think about policies, but I'm so proud of one key piece of model legislation that we did together. And it was kind of, what bill was that? It was the bill that I think we got an award for, limiting solitary confinement for pregnant women in our juvenile detention centers, in our prisons. We passed that, and that became model legislation that other states started working on. And this session, we passed an incredible bill that we didn't talk about. And he sat for hours trying to get it even heard in state agency. The bill we did about providing bereavement leave to state employees. So Arkansas didn't have bereavement leave until this session. And so they were just allowing people to use 3 days of sick leave if someone passed away, if they had a loved one or a child. And Representative Pilkington and I approached the governor in her office about this. And we kind of approached it just from like, hey, what if a parent lost a child? Because we're always talking about kids. We think that they should have a longer time to be off with their family, to take care of things. When we were drafting the bill, Pilkington was like, put 21 days in there. I said, they are not going to approve us paying people for 21 days to be off. I'm not saying they don't need that much time, because I'm not a mother yet, but I was like, let's be realistic. He said, let's put it in there. Let's start with that. And I was like, okay. And so we went back and forth with the governor's office, landed on a week. And so going forward, we kept the same statute for family member that we already have in the code. But Arkansans will now be able to have a week of leave off that will come from the catastrophic fund. And then if you need the next week off, you can use your personal leave. Because as we were working on this bill, we found people that were dealing with aging parents. And so some people had used the time to take care of a sick parent or while they were in the hospital. And then when they actually passed away, they didn't have time to actually like have a memorial service and a funeral service. They just had like maybe 1 day of leave to where they can go for the funeral service. So to me, that's about compassion. That's not a Democrat or a Republican bill. And like he said, the governor supported that bill. And it was funny because some Republicans were asking me like, how did you get the support of the governor? And she didn't ask you to do anything in return for that. And when I talked to her about it, she's like, good policy is good policy, like what he said. And so she was able to, someone from her office came and testified in support of the bill with me on the Senate side. Pilkington waited for hours one night trying to get the bill heard on that side. But that's our commitment, if that makes sense. And I was proud that we were able to pass that, because to me, that just shows that good policy is good policy. It doesn't matter if it was a Democratic bill or a Republican bill, but it's probably one of the legislations that I'm proud of that we were able to accomplish this session. And we had a couple more that we were working on, but we always try to find something that's significant that we can pass together that we're proud of each session in a bipartisan manner. So now Arkansas has bereavement leave. And unfortunately, it's life, right? Somebody is going to pass away. And the way we did make sure, we were concerned about if it was your if it was like your foster child, you were able to get the time off. And we've worked on adopted child. Like, we wanted to make sure that nobody was excluded from that. And so that's a piece that I'm proud of. And that's young people, you know what I mean? Thinking about what are the needs of families that sometimes maybe people that aren't from our generation are thinking about. And so
I can definitely say we're punching above our weight class as long as you two are in office. And, we're attached to our phones and technology, but this is proof that race, neighborhood, community, where you come from should not matter when you're really working for the common good of all of your citizens, be it Arkansas or any state. I'm just blessed, and I think our viewers are blessed that we've got two great members of the Arkansas legislature working together. I know you all don't always get along, but who does? And I consider you guys brothers and sisters more than colleagues, because I know how you two operate. I'm going to just leave with this and say that a shameless plug for another one of my clients, the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation, and the work we do with the ALICE entity there, which stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Families, Employed Families of Arkansas, formerly known as the working class poor. We're fighting day in and day out to advocate that people are aware of the issues that impact those families, and many of the pieces of legislation that you guys work on without us even coming to your desk or your doorstep have really, really supported, and hope that that will continue to support their efforts. Thank you all so very much for your time today and this information, not only about maternal health, but for all the bills out there. And for our viewers out there, we want to thank you all for joining us once again for Stronger with Armstrong podcast. We certainly hope that the information shared today finds you all and leaves you a bit stronger. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to follow us on all social media platforms, streaming platforms, and be sure to subscribe.